I'd like to introduce next Anthony Lawrence, and before that I'd also like to say apologies to the poets for giving brief introductions and biographies. We're very lucky to have all of the poets who are here today, and all of them are incredibly skilled and have many books published and awards to their names, or soon will, so I'd just like to make that acknowledgement. Anthony hasn't worked with us specifically in Unlocked, however he has been, was a feature poet in one of our projects called Pigeon Poetry Project, which was a long while ago where we decided to look at the relationship between poetry and sport, and we commissioned poets to write poems that were then attached to the ankles of pigeons, racing pigeons, not just any pigeon, and flown down the south coast of New South Wales, and we set up an online legal ethical betting system in which the public could bet on which pigeon, which poet, which poem, which trainer they thought would win. So it was looking at everyone's obsession as well with what a good poem is, what first prize is, what do you have to do to win it. And Anthony was one of those poets. And I've been a reader of Anthony's work for many years, and his most recent book, The Welfare of My Enemy, explores the disturbing and strange and fascinating phenomena of missing people. And I thought it would be interesting to present you with, I suppose, the perspective of victims through someone who has written a fictional account of it. Anthony has also worked in maximum security jails, so he'll be talking to you a little bit about that. Anthony.
Thanks, Jo. I'd just like to thank Jo and Olivia and Tim for getting me down from the deep north to this wonderful event. And I have very fond memories of pigeon poetry. They were a very literate flock, and I think mine got falconed on the way, so I never made it to the finishing line. So there's a poem out there in pigeon bones on the reef, somewhere off the south coast of New South Wales. I'd like to begin by reading a poem from my last collection, The Welfare of My Enemy, which, as Jo said, explores the phenomenon of missing persons, but in various ways, from the actual fact of someone going missing physically, and the machinery of recovery that swings into action when someone goes missing, but also people who are missing emotionally, parents who absent themselves from their children's lives for years. It covers a wide terrain. So these poems are untitled. A clear blue day in a black time. I was waiting, then moved on as the alarm of my pulse went off. I put 2 fingers to an artery in my neck to monitor fear, confusion, anger, apprehension. Blood responds to being laid open to all kinds of emotion. A life of trouble. I studied track work updates, timetables. I found stations with waiting rooms. Those with ticket offices I underlined. I began my search in the lit confines of the head. I travelled with your name and age, the looping swirl of your laugh, idiosyncrasies, your shoulder scar, your habit of shooting the breeze with strangers, homeless park haunters, law enforcement officers, taxi drivers. Wherever I went, I made notes. I left thoughts on a voice-activated digital recorder. The worst thing was, I always returned with a pain in my side, as if I tried to run a marathon. A stitch that worked its way into my chest and stayed there, throbbing. As for the rest of my searching, my need to find out why and where and when, I made my way into the world, bypassing imagination and its litany of scenarios, and I welcomed the legal, usual, rule by thumb by numbers and ordered systems of engagement until I was overcome with exhaustion and information. As a last resort, I drove to Mount Victoria, where we'd fought over where to go for dinner. Who stormed out and who gave in, who took the blame, who spent the night with a blanket and a pillow on the floor, whose blood flowed faster under pressure, who did what to whom, and why did we constantly shout and fight? I pulled into an old weatherboard cinema's car park. I could hear you turning over in bed and shouting, so I turned the radio on. I opened the door and inhaled the pine-scented air. Was it snowing or was it fog in the parking lights, giving another angle to a thought of approaching snow? I had nowhere and everywhere to go. Lithgow, where we gathered magic mushrooms as the prison lights burned into the gloom. Bathurst, where we stayed in bed for 3 days in a cold white room in a bed and breakfast. Jenolan Caves, where you abused a guide because her flashlight kept wandering while she talked. We were together and apart. We walked to and from each other. Now you're gone. I'll keep looking for you, but not for long. Your memory is the dull, cracked shell of a long list of words. Loving, wild, unfiltered, dysfunctional. When I came back from a wonderful experience, I spent 6 months in a Australia Council studio in Rome, called the B.R. Whiting Studio, where I was working on a book of poems. When I came home, I was living in the Blue Mountains and didn't have any work. And a friend of mine mentioned that there might be a gig teaching poetry at Lithgow Jail, so I made some inquiries and was very lucky to get some work there teaching poetry. I didn't know that they actually wanted me to teach in the protection unit, which was a whole different situation. And I have to say that almost a year that I spent there was a most extraordinary experience. I won't go into any names or reasons for any of the people being there, of course, but protection is a completely different situation. The ceilings are very low, and it's the kind of confinement that left me feeling quite claustrophobic just from a number of hours there, so I can only imagine what it would be like there to spend many years. We leapt straight into the deep end with poetry. There were 12 class members, and we went into Petrarchan and Shakespearean sonnets. We looked at Villanelle's sestinas, pantoums. We looked at free verse, the blues. We looked at limericks, haiku, and it was an extraordinary commitment that everyone made to every session. And some of the poems that emerged from those men in that environment, some of them were absolutely extraordinary. And I can only say that you don't have to be in prison to be put under an enormous amount of emotional pressure, but that kind of pressure certainly helps. I think any kind of emotional pressure helps people to crack a line of poetry open to reveal its best possible music, and it certainly worked with those men. Extreme focus and major commitment, and for me it was just an amazing privilege, really. But so to be involved with Unlocked brings back those times quite palpably to me. Thank you.